4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and the Roundtable crew, the MGoBlog Roundtable crew. We wanted to make sure that we got a show in to send the show into the holiday season. And I wanted to make sure that I was back for that, as it's been a different week, a different signing day week. I want to, again, every segment, kind of share my gratitude to all of those who have sent well wishes and prayers, to those who are just joining us. The latest with my brother. I want to always be careful not to share too much of his, of his business, but he is still on a ventilator, still unresponsive, but they did not express a greater level of concern due to that. They said some people just take a longer time to come out of heavy sedation. So that's kind of where we are right now, looking to hopefully have today be the day where he wakes up and then they can take him off the ventilator, and the next phase of recovery, which will be much longer, can begin. So your well wishes and prayers are very well received. And you might, for those who are watching in the stream, you might see me repping Flint today, because I got all the people, not on beyond family, because family you expected, but all the people at Genesis Health System, all the people back home who have really, really stepped up in a big way. I just want to send a big shout out to those people who just felt fitting to do something to send a shout out to the folks back home. So there's why I'm all Flint out today, is because of that. So with that, let me welcome in the Roundtable crew. No Brian Cook today. He's under the weather, so feel better, Brian. But let's start off first with the man to my right on the screen is Craig Ross. Craig, how you doing this morning?
I'm predictably pedestrian. I'm not shockingly well like John, or I might be oxymoronish, ordinary. One of the two, but okay.
All right.
And by the way, that's a man with too much education. Clearly, that's.
And then we have Seth Fisher. Seth, how are you this morning?
I don't know. I would adverb that, Craig. I would make it oxymoronically. You can actually do that with.
Is that a real word?
Yes, totally. You know what? On MGoBlog, we just make our words up. We use the contraction systems that people already know and understand, and just keep on going, which is how language works anyway. So anyway, here I am. Hi guys. I'm not wearing a funny T-shirt. I know we got Craig in his CCCP jersey on, which a lot of Detroiters have that jersey, but you're the only one I think who has it because of communism, not because of the hockey.
Hey, the Red Army hockey team was a great team, and they were fun to watch.
I have argued, by the way, that is the greatest team in '79 ever assembled. The one that the USA beat.
Yeah,
was and the NHL guys will tell you that. I mean, they smoked the NHL All-Stars 6-0 at the Madison Square Garden. US, NHL rinks, NHL refs, NHL rules. And with a backup goalie, Mishkin, in there. But hey, your goalie right there, number 20. I know who that is. That's Vladislav Tretiak. That painting behind me, by the way, is an original painting of him getting beat by Pete Mahavlich in Game 2.
Yeah. It's all good. Thank you for that, Chuck.
Look what we did. We got Bacon talking 1970s hockey. Look what you've done, Craig.
It's a vortex that you can't get out of. So
praise the guy and kick him in the junk, all in the same segment, right there, right? John Bacon, you just heard that voice. He doesn't even need introduction. I'm just happy that you found your way onto the stream here, Bakes. We were a little worried there for a second.
Well, we needed Wally Pip, to go to the locker room for the day, and that's Brian Cook. Look that one up, kids. I could be Lou Gehrig. We don't know yet, but not very likely. But yes, I am shockingly well. What other show takes 5 minutes for three guys to say I'm fine? There you go.
Hey, introductions. You'll learn about the roundtable. Introductions are a major part of the show.
Oh, dude, I'm an avid listener. Trust me, I'm a groupie of this thing. It's pathetic.
Listen, the Craig Ross soliloquy is something that people tune in for. Trust me, I've heard this. So, but fellas, so much this week. You got signing day. You got transfer portal. You got bidding wars, open bidding wars on signing day. And then you also have the NCAA with this news yesterday that Michigan has received its notice of allegations for COVID gate. You got to call you got different gates, Bakes, that we got to focus on. So COVID gate, they finally got the notice of allegations for COVID gate and still waiting on the notice of allegations for sign gate.
Dude, the NCAA, when you think they can't embarrass themselves further, proves you wrong repeatedly. And it's still about a cheeseburger, ultimately. When they said, they came out and broke their own rules, of course, on this and their own gag order on themselves and said, no, it's not about cheeseburgers. That was a few months ago. You're right. It's about 4 cheeseburgers because everything you described here is a level 2 violation. By your own definition, these are all equal. And it's the equivalence of a cheeseburger. So, all right, did Jim Harbaugh lie about that or not? Good luck proving that one with the other. Did you know or not know is the question, basically, if it was a violation. And, you got guys getting in Lamborghinis elsewhere, totally legal. And the NCAA is making a very good pitch for its own irrelevance right now, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more with you, John. It's somewhat mind-boggling. They've tried to leverage some illegal cheeseburgers into a level 1 violation because Harbaugh misled them about illegal cheeseburgers. I mean, that's an absurdity from the top. I mean, what they should have done if they had any conscience, if they had any sense of ethics, if they had any sense of anything, the first thing they would have done was just say, okay, we suspended you 3 games for nothing, or you suspended yourself for 3 games for basically nothing. It's enough. And everyone has said, oh, okay, maybe there is something there. But now we know there's nothing there whatsoever.
It is truly a nothing burger there.
Yeah, there you go.
Sitting right there.
Right.
So it didn't do anything. I don't know if you have any comments on. We kind of talked COVID gate to death, Seth. But it was a news drop on signing.
Well, it was the timing. It was the timing, right? It's all. So I think the NCAA is trying to send a message because it's signing day and people are out there. And, you got Jeremiah Smith, the top recruit in the country, saying that Florida schools are throwing all kinds of money at him. And congratulations to Jeremiah Smith, who in the end decided he doesn't want the money. He's going to go to Ohio State, who didn't offer him anything, who didn't have a single penny to induce him to sign with Ohio State. And those Florida schools, they were trying. And the NCAA wanted to tell those Florida schools, look, we don't do things like that. Look at Michigan. They bought a cheeseburger. You buy a cheeseburger for a guy to induce him to come to your school, we are going to come and get you. If you obfuscate about the cheeseburger, we are going to give you a level 1 violation and a show cause. We are serious about inducements here. Congratulations to Ohio State, who got their guy and didn't have to give him a penny. Way to go.
You're right. It's great stuff, Seth. I mean, you've had these instances where guys kind of tell you exactly what's going on. Jeremiah Smith, didn't he say? Was it Florida State? I think he might have said Miami's throwing all this money.
I think he said the Florida schools are throwing all kinds of money.
All this money around. Yeah. You remember when Davison Igbinosun, when he signed with Ohio State, the transfer from Ole Miss, he said, I think he said something like, I got to take care of my mother. But we had Will Johnson on a couple of weeks ago, and he said, oh yeah, he took the money. He took the money to go to Ohio State. I just got my quote.
Which is legal. You can take the money if it's NIL money.
Yeah.
But they just don't want it to be inducements. Because you have to understand the difference is that an inducement is money that Michigan gives you. And NIL is money that anybody but Michigan gives you. Do you see the difference?
Cheeseburger, Lamborghini.
Right.
It's all about inducements. And they wrote the rules serious. I mean, they are serious about this, guys. So
I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
There you
all
go.
these distinctions without differences that they try to make us see, but aren't really there. So listen, man, this is why I think if you are a recruiting fan, which most of the people who are watching, you watch the roundtable or you are with us on the Michigan Insider, a lot of recruiting fans are watching. You're wondering how Michigan is going to to continue to compete at this level, given everything that's going on around them, and they aren't going to participate in that. And this is where development comes in, scouting and development comes in, and this is where the portal comes in. And for everything that you say about the number of 5-stars, they are getting difference makers in the portal, Seth, Bakes, and Craig, and I think they got their biggest one to date in the kid from Maryland, Jay-Sean Barham. I think that's the dude.
Oh yeah, he was a high-end recruit, and then as a freshman, he was one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten as a true freshman. And that is a hard position to play, and it's a hard position the way that Maryland plays. We were super impressed by him, and then his Pro Football Focus score came way down this year because they didn't like his coverage. And as someone who grades linebacker coverage, I can tell you that is absolutely meaningless. I know coverages, and you have to know exactly what coverage it is. You have to know when they're switching, why they're switching, who they're attacking, how they're attacking. Junior Colson has been coming out with terrible grades for me for years, and he's still like one of the best coverage guys on PFF. It's way too hard to grade, so I'm not worried about the low score this year. I think that he was covering for a lot of other guys. I think the guy he was playing next to was one of the worst linebackers in the Big Ten, Ruben Hippolyte. So they had him covering Donovan Edwards in man, and that was one of the problems that Michigan was having against Maryland. Normally they use a safety, and when they use a safety, that means our tight end gets a matchup that we like. So that's how Michigan's kind of been using Donovan Edwards this year. And they're like, oh, we're just going to put Barham on it. And we go, oh, no. Right? They canceled him with a linebacker. So that's the kind of talent we're talking about. He's already played 2 years in the Big Ten. He knows everybody. He scouted everybody. This is a great pickup.
Yeah, I think that is the pivot that I've seen, the most meaningful pivot that I've seen, Bakes, is that they are finding guys that aren't just contributors in the portal, but they come in and they start, and they come in and Olu Watimi type guys, right? If you can do that, if you can get difference makers in the portal, it's easier to project their impact than it is the recruits.
Well, it's like an NFL or Major League Baseball team that's 2 or 3 players away from a title run. That's where Michigan tends to be these days. And you add 2 or 3 guys who plug in right away, who end up being all Big Ten or even all American sometimes, but all Big Ten usually, it seems like. And that's a very good formula. And you said earlier in the show today, Sam, and I agree with it. Okay, Jaden's a 4-star, 5-star. I guarantee you, the Michigan coaches do not give a what over the 4 or 5 stars. They know what they need. They know what they like. They know what they can work with. And I recall last year in the Michigan-Ohio State game, Ohio State had 14 5-star players in the field, and Michigan had 4. And I believe 14 is more. Even my math can handle that. Who played better? What team do you want to play on? If you're a transfer portal guy, where do you want to go? And it shows that some old school principles are not yet dead. So you don't have to get off my lawn quite yet. You see Jimbo Fisher down at Texas A&M, all the money in the world, and it fails miserably. That's glorious. That's like seeing the Yankees lose. You can't get enough of that. And then you see what? You see Michigan 3 times in a row. They can have all the excuses they want. The excuses have stopped, I've noticed. But what do? They take, on paper, according to Street and Smith or whatever, less talent. They coach them up, they get them together, and they get all the intangibles going for them. One guy in the transfer portal tells you a lot about the culture they've created down at Schembechler Hall. And they're a better team. So they get there the way they want to get there, but they get there in part because Michigan now, I think, knows its strike zone better than just about any team out there. They know exactly what they want, what they need, who's going to work at Michigan, not just at Schembechler Hall, but on campus and so on, and who's not. And they're getting those guys consistently. This is one of the best bunch of guys I've ever seen assembled in one place. Forget the talent. And that matters. It actually matters.
Yeah, it does. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where you are on it, Craig, but yeah. I think that this is sustainable. I think. I mean, at least until they figure out how to better balance this equation as far as the pay for play, because that's what it is. We see pay for play going on. Until they figure out a way to bring some order to the chaos, I think Michigan has found a sustainable way here to continue to compete at the highest level.
Well, it sure seems that way. I mean, Michigan's recruiting class this year will be somewhere between 18 and 20, which on some sense you go, oh, here's one of the best teams in the country. At worst, probably one of the best 4 teams in the country. But worst case, maybe the best team in the country, and they're recruiting at the 18 to 20 level, and you're doing it at a school that also is a good academic school, better than the competition by and large, and so. Uh, I understand. Well, I get emails from fans where there's and friends saying the sky is falling, that our recruiting class is just terrible, and I said, well, wait a minute. Uh, I used to look at recruiting films on kids that Michigan was interested in, or where the kids were interested in Michigan. I don't do it anymore. I occasionally will look at tape once a kid is committed, and like if you may recall last year, Sam, when Michigan recruited Ben Hall, and oh, he's nothing. No, I watched Ben Hall's tape. Ben Hall was was a real deal, and this year I watched Samaj Morgan, and he was like a 3-star because he was, quote, too small. Well, watch his tape. I don't care how small he is. The guy can play. And what Michigan has done, and I'd say the same thing is true this year for Michael Kaapana. I assume that's how that's pronounced because it sounds what?
Kapana.
You sure that's how he pronounces it? Because it's Hawaiian.
I know. I don't know. I went yesterday before our show.
Yeah.
I went and looked at video from the hometown of every one of these players to try to get the hometown announcer to say the name, and that was the only one that I had trouble with was Sprague, Sprague. People keep on saying it differently, and I still not figured that one out.
Okay. Well, in any event, I mean, what Michigan is doing is they're looking for kids with ceilings. And if you look at a guy like Kapana, you can't look at that kid and say that there isn't a super high ceiling there. And it's the same for Jaden Davis. People say, oh, he's too small, he's not mobile enough. Well, look at his tape. He completes pass after pass after pass. And when I look at his tape, I see Drew Brees, at least as
I was going to go right there. Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. I mean, to me, that's who he reminds me of. And Brees wasn't, coming out of high school, wasn't considered a superstar. He was good. And
he's from Austin, and Texas blew him off for Purdue. That's worth noting.
Yeah. And when I look at Jaden Davis, I see Drew Brees, and on my limited ability to look. So I'm not so concerned about what the recruiting services say, because they're often looking at, oh, he's not big enough or he's not fast enough. Well, when I look at a tape, I'm looking at, can he play? And is there upside there? And beyond that, what Michigan is doing is developing guys. And you talked about the transfer portal. Well, we had 9 guys come into the transfer portal last year. All 9 of them contributed. All 9 of them. Some of them significantly, but all of them contributed in some way, shape, or form. And I think a couple of those guys, Turner, the place kicker, AJ Barner. I mean, those guys are going to get serious NFL looks. So it's right now. It seems to me it's a recipe that's working for Michigan. So fans, don't get too worked up because we're number 18 or 19 in the recruiting portal. I mean, our ratings, I would say, don't worry about it. And you have the upside that, we're not in the pay for play business. Yes, we may be in the hamburger for play business, but
which is so much worse. It's so much worse.
So much worse. Yeah.
I think I don't think it's ridiculous for fans to think, man, you got to have some 5 stars. I think you have to have some, but
really
you can develop some too. So I think
how many 5 stars have been in this program the last 4 years?
And then,
but how many Will Johnsons would you take?
Oh, I'd take them every day.
Yeah, and so I mean, and JJ McCarthy, there's a certain. If we get Bryce Underwood, I'm going to be happy. Okay,
sure. We'll all be happy.
But you have to keep it in perspective. Certain positions,
and that's my point. So you do need to get some, Maybe you get some in recruiting, but to equal those, the Ohio States of the world, which Michigan, they have surpassed Ohio State, right? And Ohio State is way ahead of them in the rankings this year.
Always.
How do you bridge the 5-star gap? Well, you can develop your guys. You can develop your guys better than them, and then you can go get some 5-stars in the portal as well. So when you say Oluwatimi was a 5-star guy, I would say that. I think
I would. Yeah, I would too.
Well,
he was
look,
a
the
3-star out of
NFL
high
says
school.
that. I mean,
Yeah,
when
right.
Michigan goes to the NFL, who's getting drafted more than Michigan players?
Right.
I mean, there's your answer.
Well,
You look at the 9 they just got, the 9 they got last year, all impact guys, and I'm telling you, I think Jayshon Barham is the best transfer they've gotten so far. So what does this class look like if you add Barham, who's in the fold, and then you add a Damani Jackson, who Michigan is in serious play for?
Well,
right?
both those guys are 5-stars, by the way, who went somewhere else and played and got on the field. Now, Damani Jackson's a different story because he was playing in a terrible defense and they left him out to dry. But those are guys who have 5-star talent. And I was talking, cornerback and wide receiver are two positions where you really should pay attention to the stars. And Michigan does need to do better with the bag, because it's really just about how fast can you run. Remember, we got like Darian Greenmore, and everyone was like, that guy's got great ball skills, and what a team player, and we love this guy, and everywhere he goes, he's friends with people. Can the guy run? No. Well, he's not going to play. So, I mean, Will Johnson can run. He is as big as he is. He is as talented as he is. He has ball skills like he has, and he can run, and that's what makes him a 5-star. You know, Marvin Harrison has all those ball skills. He's one of the best receivers I've ever seen, and he can run, right? The things that make you very good at certain positions are very easy to see in recruiting, and that's why those guys get the bag, because you can see it. You know, you're investing in something that's going to come through. Now, defensive tackle used to be that way, but Michigan's kind of found a way to find defensive tackles, and I love their line class. So they found positions where you can develop guys if you take high ceilings. And you look at like the guys they have on edge. This, I think, might be the best edge class, maybe one of the best edge classes they've ever recruited. And they don't look like anything right now. And you compare them. So Michigan got 27 recruits this year. Miami got 27 recruits this year. Miami's ranked, I think, 3rd in the country on 24/7. Michigan's down at 16th or something right now. I bet you Michigan's players are going to be better than Miami's players in 4 years. Come back and find me on December 21st, 2027, and let's look at these two classes and see how they came out. But Miami, they got, Justin Scott. He was a guy that Michigan really wanted. They got Elias Rudolph. He was a guy who was committed to Michigan until Miami came down. And I think we ended up even better off. Michigan knows how to go and find these guys.
Well, and this is the other part of recruiting, and that's relevant to the portal. You might lose them on the front end when they go for the bag, but when it doesn't work and they got to find some place where they're going to get developed. I mean, there's some guys who keep looking for the bag, but there are going to be a lot of those guys who say, all right, now I got to make the best choice as far as who's going to get me ready. Where am I going to win? Those start to move up, and that's not me disparaging anyone who has money up there too, because I get that. And I think it should be, personally, I think it should be something that's on the table for recruits too. And that, if I were running a program, that wouldn't rule a prospect out for me. What would rule a prospect out for me is if that's all they wanted. If they came in, that's all they want to talk about. They come on and, hey, how much money am I going to pay? They don't want to talk. Think about, anything about, development. They don't want to talk anything about academics. It's all about money. Then that guy's not a fit. But I don't think that it's a characteristic, a poor sign of character that someone is talking about money. So I don't want to come off like that. But the guys who look for the bag first and foremost, a lot of times that doesn't work out. Yeah. And then when they get there and it doesn't work out and they're looking at the portal and they're looking for another place, the criteria starts to change. The prioritization starts to change a bit more. And if you're a Michigan and you've established relationships with those guys, now you can come back and get them because they're talking different. They're thinking different. The criteria is different.
Well, and for these guys, the clock is ticking.
Right.
You got a
and
year or
it's
two
not-
left.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're always on a sliding scale here. So I don't think Michigan's going to get anybody who's just about the bag. Michigan State gets a couple of those guys, and then they go somewhere else a year later for bag somewhere else. I want Michigan competing with Ohio State, with Alabama, with Georgia for these 5-star guys that they identify, that they want, that they know. And the problem is that Michigan's just not going to throw money at them up front that the other schools are. And you know, I think you need to understand, Craig, you're going to love this line. I think you need to understand Soviet Russia in order to understand this system.
He's
Because
listening. Go ahead.
the end of Soviet Russia, when the Soviet Union was falling apart, they had a fantastic black market to get any good you wanted. And the black market knew how it functioned. They knew where to go. Everyone knew how to function with the black market. And if you were an American company who had gotten in there and was trying to do it legitimately, you were overwhelmed because you didn't. There was no way to operate. You had to go through the black market. And when the system collapsed, and all of a sudden people could trade freely, they had to take the old system, the old black market, and turn it into a legit system. They didn't just go to an American system. No one knew how to work in an American system. So we're trying to do this transition right now. The same thing where everything's been black market. This is how they know how to operate. This is the system that they're trying to port over and now make it legal. And Michigan doesn't know how to operate. They're the American company living in this world. Now they've operated in this world before. They know how to say things and whatnot. But the winners in this system are going to be those who know how to do both. And Michigan really does not know how to offer. They will not offer anything up front. And either the system has to completely change to something that's perfect for Michigan, which I don't think is going to happen, or they just got to learn how to do what Georgia does, learn how to do what Alabama does, where they have pockets of money for certain players when they need to get their cornerback, when they need to get their wide receiver, just to be able to make it happen. And that's just a bridge that they will not cross, and I wish they would.
I'd like to say this, Sam, for a moment. When I say that Michigan fans are different, that's what I'm talking about. All right. If I wrote my books anywhere else, I'd be talking to you from a secure, undisclosed location in Knoxville, Tennessee. That man just gave you 5 minutes of Soviet history before tying it back somehow to college football.
Economic history.
The relevant word there, John, is somehow, which is always the word in this show. Somehow it made sense.
Get the point. You get the point. It was
a big gap in the middle. There's no quite the somehow bridge is not for rookies. I concede that point.
Okay.
And yet I guarantee you the Michigan fan base tracked him on this somehow. So Seth and the Michigan fans, hats off.
All right, folks, we need to get to a break. We'll come back on the other side and continue with the roundtable. So stay tuned for that here with John Bacon, by the way. Continue with that here on the Michigan Insider.
Poor man's Brian Cook. A poor man's Brian Cook.
On Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, The Ticket.
Clear on the radio, just a 2.5 minute break.
Yeah.
2.5 minute break.
There's the PJ O'Rourke. I'm not a big fan of him, but he can be funny. And he said the Soviet Union didn't fall apart. They fell apart because the citizens no longer wanted to wear shoes stitched in Bulgaria, and and that was the real reason. And I think there was some truth to that. Not that it worked out particularly well, because they've probably gotten worse than they ever were.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think it fell apart because they saw how fat and happy the Americans were living, and go, wait, that's not fair.
Well, that's right. That was the point. They wanted those Italian Continentals.
They just wanted American jeans, man.
Or American jeans. That right. They didn't want this crap, and
right.
And so, but the party has always gone out of bounds there for whatever reason.
So I'm curious. Inquiring minds want to know what kind of threat you guys think the Chargers are to try to make a run at Jim.
Legit. I got inside sources on that one. Those guys and Las Vegas, especially. It's a family thing, of course. Al Davis's son. Those are the two to watch for. I've heard the Bears also, but I'm not buying it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not
think-
buying that either.
I'm
man.
not.
With Kevin Warren
was-
in there,
That's
Why
it.
would you leave the Big Ten to go work for Kevin Warren?
yeah, I would be surprised. Nah, man, the Chargers are the ones that I think would.
Well,
Here's what I can say, and I'll repeat this on the air.
Mhm.
Because we're talking to the people. So Bakes, we're talking to people in the stream. There are people, all kind of folks.
We're not off air right now.
We're not
Oh.
off air right now.
Careful, in other words. All right.
Yeah. But you can swear.
Like
Ricky, move. You can swear all you want. No problem
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're off radio, so you can kind of say what you want, but you're still talking to people live.
yeah, you're still talking to people live, and so, yeah, I think Antonio Pierce is doing a fantastic job, and that's the other thing. I mean, his locker room is going to ride for him. They're responding to him. I mean, he wouldn't have got a shot any other way, and the fact that he is making the most of it, I think they're going to be hard pressed to not give him a chance to be the full time coach. And if you're Jim, I mean, man, I just looking at the different situations, I'd rather go to. I mean, the Chargers just need a coach. Like, they got a squad.
Right.
I mean, they got a quarterback. They got big time receivers. They have Austin Eckler in the backfield. You look at defense, man.
Back in about 10 seconds, guys.
We'll get into this week. Come back here.
And we are back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side. Our last show before the holiday. Want to be back for that. Want to thank all of you for all of your, your words of support. So many posts, texts, direct messages, tweets, calls. Appreciate all of those. It's truly been uplifting. Definitely want to be back and to share my thanks and my family's gratitude here before we sign off for the holidays, and certainly want to react to signing day, and then to talk to the crew, the roundtable crew, not only about the recruiting class, which we just did, but also about the Jim Harbaugh dynamics, because we see the coaching carousel, NFL style, has already started to turn as Brandon Staley, he met his fate. We knew it was coming. He was the reason that Chargers team was underachieving. And the Chargers have always been the squad that I looked at and said, they could be a threat. But Bakes, let's start with you here. Here's what I've heard consistently from every level. And by every level, I mean from inside the program, inside the athletic department, and from within leadership, is that Jim Harbaugh has made it very, very clear that this is where he wants to be.
Michigan.
That he is not Michigan, that he is not going to pursue the NFL, which is different from a couple of years ago when he pursued the NFL. He pursued
actively and openly, right?
Yeah, the Vikings. So that was different. Now, if they come knocking on his door, he'll listen. Like he listened last year to the Broncos, and he turned them down. So, the question now is, will the NFL, will they knock on his door again? And if they knock on his door again, will they make a more compelling kind of pitch than they made before? And will it make a difference if they do?
Well, a few things. Denver's a fine place to live, one of my favorite cities. LA, I'm not as fond of, but I know they've got roots, of course, in San Diego. They both lived there. It's where they got married and so on. That's Jim and Sarah Harbaugh. So that's not a hard sell for them at all. They've got a place in San Diego. So that's one aspect there on the intangible side. I think that you read on it, by the way, from what I'm hearing, when you guys talk about recruiting, I just nod a lot because what I know about recruiting comes from you guys already anyway. So, but in this case, of course, I do have sources, very good sources, and your read is exactly right, that he is not looking. He wants to stay at Michigan, but he is not going to be stupid either and paint himself into a corner, nor should he, I think. So I think LA is probably the best option there. Las Vegas is still out there due to, of course, the Davis family, not due to the opening and so on. I think your read there is right. We also said quasi off the air, apparently, that Chicago, I hear a lot with Kevin Warren. the Bears, but I don't quite buy it for that reason. That I don't see Kevin Warren and Jim Harbaugh having a beer together anytime soon. So, what did Seth say off the air? Why do you leave the Big Ten to join the Big Ten? Yes,
To go work for Kevin Warren.
right. And I get the roots, you know, and Harbaugh's a Bear and all that. The biggest thing I said throughout the whole process, this is not about the NFL. It's not about the NCAA. It's not even about the Big Ten and Petiti and all that. It is about Michigan. If Michigan shows that they want Harbaugh, he stays. And it's not the number. The number is the easiest part of this equation. It's the bear hug. And I mean, I don't want to beat this dead horse, but it's not a secret that Ward and Jim are not close friends. I was very surprised to see that Ward Manuel was not at the banquet, the football banquet on Sunday, which is hard to explain. So I don't know if that matters or not, but how did Hackett get Harbaugh? With Jim, it's never, would he prefer more money versus less? Sure, we all would. But that's never been the tipping point for him. How he picked the 49ers over Michigan in the first place in 2010 was due to the bear hug. They sent him a box full of gear for his kids, all sized for all 4 kids. It was very impressive. How did Hackett get him? He schmoozed him every Saturday night, sincerely. And they were not the highest bidder compared to the NFL for Jim's services, but he gave him the bear hug. He wants to be wanted. And he's getting the bear hug from Santa Ono. He's not getting the bear hug elsewhere. And that's a problem. So that part of the equation is still up in the air. And I don't know how, and I can sincerely say, I don't know how it's going to end. I really don't.
So what
Interesting.
we heard, tell me if you're still hearing that the pitch on the table for Michigan is to make him the highest paid coach
Yes.
in the Big Ten.
Yeah, 55 million, 5 years.
5
all
years.
That's,
Yeah.
And that's not the sticking point.
Right. So what I had heard was the sticking point was the clause, the 4
heard
cause
right.
clause,
Right.
the 4 cause clause. And so, what does do you have any inkling about what the compromise could be on a 4 cause clause? Like what kind of compromises are there on 4 cause clauses in college ball? I don't know that you really see them in pro ball, but in college ball, you see them all the time. And so what's the compromise on a 4 cause clause?
Great question. And here we are in uncharted waters because you have prescribed the situation correctly. That the NFL does not have 4 cause, which only shows that it is an utterly amoral institution. They don't care about your damn cheeseburgers. They really don't. or your personal conduct or whatever Urban Meyer does when the team plane leaves. It's none of their concern, apparently. So that's out in the NFL. Of course, they're uniform pretty much in college ranks. Here's where it gets tricky. 2 clauses. One is the NFL flirting clause. Can't flirt with the NFL. And then there's the 4 cause clause. Now the question in both cases, the NFL flirting. Are we talking about, can he return the phone call of his friends at the Las Vegas Raiders, the Davis family? Is that flirting or is that just being respectful to an old friend? Versus, flying to Minnesota or whatever. For the 4 cause, are we talking about cheeseburgers or lies about cheeseburgers or whatever the hell the next thing is, Signgate? So all this boils down to 2 questions. Who defines these things and who decides if you've crossed that line? And if right now that equation is Jim and Ward Manuel, that's kind of the sticking point. There's just not a lot of goodwill here to draw on. So that's an issue. I think if Santa Ono were the guy making these decisions, I don't think Harbaugh would have too much problem. I think that's the issue, that there's just not a great deal of trust between these 2 right now.
Well, I think it's probably fair to surmise that Harbaugh and his bosses have had rocky relationships, and I kind of like that about him. I like the fact that that an employee gives a hard time to a superior, unlike other people. I think that's how the world should work. I think an employee should give a hard time to his superior, especially when maybe they deserve it, and that the supervisor should be more gentle with the people he or she supervises. And that's my vision of the world, but it's the opposite of the way the world seems to work, I guess. And so I don't know. If I'm Michigan and want Harbaugh, and they seem to want him very much and are willing to pay him, I put a very general provision in that we can fire him for cause, and then define a neutral and arbitrator who makes a decision on what for cause is. And because the law works best, in fact, when you're just looking to reasonableness. I'll tell you what, Michigan, I do this stuff. I volunteer. I'll do it for free, and then you can bring the case to me, and I'll decide if there's been a violation based upon a generalized reasonableness standard. Because trying to define these things in advance and micromanage language of what cause is only gets you in trouble, because you always end up with not knowing if what was intended, or if it. So
it's Juwan Howard and the zero tolerance. Okay, well, what is even at the time I thought, watch out, because you're gonna get some crazy little shade of gray, and right now they have one.
Right.
And how does it tilt?
Right, exactly right. You've nailed it, John. You should have finished law school
or stayed.
And so my idea is, a general reasonableness provision works fine, because then you can talk about, well, what happened? Is it reasonable under these circumstances, or what once you know all the facts? I mean, in Juwan's case, we don't even know what the facts are. So, something that I always harp upon and get garbage from, or criticism.
By the way, we all get garbage. That's
right.
That's not negotiable.
I mean,
I think that kind of fits into having an arbitrator. I mean, there was an arbitrator of sorts with this whole Juwan Sanderson deal, as that wasn't Ward's office who investigated that. That was I don't know what do you call it, the HR department?
Yeah, I think so.
So they looked into it and rendered a verdict, if you will. And so they were the ones who ultimately made the decision that no wrongdoing had occurred. Do you have something similar in place that in a 4-clause way that can make some kind of a assessment, or serve as an arbitrator that would bridge this whatever gap this is? Because like I said, I was like, man, what is compromise? I mean, did you just take a clause out?
I mean,
what do you do?
One of us here is a lawyer, and
supposedly
the great line from The Simpsons when the sleazy attorney, of course, Lionel Hutz, says, "Mrs. Simpson, with all due respect, you're not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. The one here is even close is Dr. Nick Riviera. So hey, but this guy's actually a mediator. Is what he does. Everything you just said makes sense. Ultimately, I mean, every contract, no matter how well you write it, no matter how detailed, etc., still boils down to trust at some level. That your word's good, my word's good. That we don't want to go to court. The Juwan Howard case is a good case there. And also, by the way, I agree with you that I don't mind seeing an underling, in this case Jim Harbaugh, being proactive, aggressive, whatever, with his boss. But I also don't mind seeing an athletic director. I don't like to see the lapdog AD either. Which is what you see in the SEC.
Yeah,
where I mean, who thinks Nick? I mean, honestly, what SEC AD is going to stand up to his football coach? Good luck if you try that one. And certainly Don Cannon was not afraid of Bo Schembechler. He understood that that's where his eggs were, and he gave Bo whatever he needed as a rule. But you can't have that situation where the guy's just a lapdog either. In that sense, I defend Ward, and as you have pointed out repeatedly, Sam, and correctly, that if Ward wanted to get rid of Harbaugh, 2-4 is it's teed up. I don't know who fights you at 2-4. So he has done some things that would go counter to that narrative.
That's really good points, John.
Here's their problem, as I understand it. Now, when you guys talk about sources, I nod a lot and go back to scrolling 247 because I don't have a bunch of sources inside. So I don't know a lot of the details here. But I do understand that there is a third party that matters a lot to this whole negotiation. That's the NCAA. And if you want to throw the Big Ten in there as well, there is I think at this point it's fact that the NCAA and the Big Ten are not going to react to Jim Harbaugh reasonably. And that is an issue. And the question is, whose problem is it? Is it Michigan's problem?
Great.
Because they belong to the NCAA and they belong to the Big Ten, and they have to manage that relationship, and they have to sometimes use legal routes. like other schools have. Tennessee used the legal route. Kansas used the legal route. They also went to their state legislatures and got laws changed so that the NCAA could not do what they wanted to do. Is Michigan willing to do that? That's Harbaugh's question to them. How much are you willing to stand at my back if these people are being unreasonable because they're being unreasonable? Michigan's question to Harbaugh is how much of their being unreasonable is because they hate you, not us. They hate you. And whatever you've done to piss them off, right, is a problem for us because they hate you. And if we lose you, we'll be fine. So whatever you have to do for them not to be coming after us because of their animosity towards you, that's on you. And I think that that's one of those situations where both sides have a very reasonable complaint. And one side who's being completely unreasonable, and it's going to continue being unreasonable, is a problem. And until they really have an answer for that problem, and there are two problems, the Big Ten and NCAA are not the same thing. But until they have an answer for those two problems, I don't know how they resolve this, because you have someone who's going to act unreasonably if we have Harbaugh here.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is. Other than like we said before, when the whole sign gate thing broke, is you start to your posture as far as the Big Ten is concerned, and your posture as far as the NCAA is concerned, it starts to be really, really different. There has been, for as long as I've paid attention, a conciliatory tone. And I mean, you can look at it in response to the Fab Five. You can look at it at every turn. It's been a conciliatory tone. And with Signgate, I've started to sense a difference. And I think that's meaningful. And I think it's functional moving forward, because what I've seen, the programs that have been able to beat the NCAA back, and I would say this probably applies to the Big Ten too, are those who didn't concede, are those who absolutely fought and on the merits. Because to me, when you're wrong, this is not me saying if Michigan is wrong, just don't admit it. Never admit anything.
No,
don't take responsibility.
Right.
I'm not saying that. But when you're right on principle, that you stand on that. And I think there's a way forward where Michigan does that. And maybe it's not as with football being a part of the Big Ten. Maybe it's not being publicly conciliatory to, hey, we're gonna self-impose XYZ punishment ahead of time. Maybe the tone moving forward, maybe a different tone moving forward elicits a different response, Seth, because I think when Tony Petitti came in and he was talking about indefinite suspension, I think he was shocked when Michigan was like, man, what the hell are you talking about?
I think you're right. 100%.
He expected for Michigan to be like, okay, we're so ashamed. We'll do this right now. When Michigan did something different, he responded different. Now, again, Michigan still got punished. You're still on the receiving end of this, but this is just another step in the path. I don't think we've seen the end game as far as the Big Ten and Michigan is concerned.
People act based off of how they think that people will tell you who they are by how they expect you to act. People expect others to act like themselves. Okay, I don't think that Tony Petitti was expecting Michigan to roll over on principle. I don't think that he has any principles. I don't think he believes anybody acts on principles. I think he believes in power, that he was coming in with power, that Michigan was coming in with no power, and they were going to have to roll over because of the power relationship. And when you say you have to stand on principle, and the schools that have beaten off the NCAA successfully.
You want to rephrase that one, Seth?
That one will be
phrasing. I'm not doing phrasing today. Who have stopped the NCAA from doing what they wanted to do successfully. UNC and Miami were not standing on principles. They didn't have any principles. UNC created fake classes for their athletes. There was no principle there. They lawyered themselves out of it. Miami had a booster who was going around just throwing money at the players and taking out the parties and whatnot. They didn't have any principle. They just said, you have no jurisdiction here, and they lawyered their way out of it. Michigan is taking a different stance, and it's blowing these people's minds because that's not how they think. They don't think in terms of who actually is right. What are the real facts? Who actually has the principles? That is not how they think. They are thinking in terms of power relationships. They are thinking in terms of what can I get away with and what can I get away with. Michigan is in a weird world where people are not acting the way that they want to act.
All right. Well, listen, that puts us out of time. As you see Ira popping on the screen, if you're in the stream, fellas, it's been another fantastic football season. That's not over. You see that Rose up there, gonna be out in Pasadena. Can't wait. Next time you hear us broadcasting, we will be. I think it'll be the day before we head out to Pasadena.
So we're gonna be on one time next week, next Wednesday, and then we fly next Thursday.
And so we'll see you next Thursday. In the meantime, in between time, all you guys have a happy and safe holiday. To all of you in the stream, the same goes for you and all of you listening. Thanks so much for being on this ride with us. We can't wait to be back with you next week. Until then, happy holidays. We'll see you next week.
And good luck, Sam.
Yeah, good luck, Sam.